Yeah, it's
Okay,
kind of
we're ready to go.
okay, very good.
Hello. Hello to Marisa Corvisiero. Did I get your name right?
Yes, you got it right. Corvisiero. Yes.
Corvisiero.
It's not an easy
It
one,
I've had harder ones,
I'm sure.
but it ranks somewhere in the middle. And welcome to
Thank you.
this children's literature channel for the New Books Network, which I am so fortunate to host. And it's always wonderful to have a senior literary agent on the show. And I'm delighted to have you. So
Thank
welcome.
you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm so glad that we can make this happen in spite of everything that's been happening. I God bless for still doing what you're doing. You must really have a love for children's literature and for your work. So
I
I'm
do.
touched that you're still bringing me on. Thank you.
I have a love for human beings.
Me too.
Yes, and I am broadcasting from Israel. Oi, so let's not go there. Let's talk about the good stuff.
Okay.
So so before we start, a few words about what you're doing these days, because when I read about you, you are like Superman or super person or superwoman. Um, you have like a doctorate in law. You're a coach and a consultant and a speaker and an author
Mhm.
and an attorney with several degrees. You're like Superwoman and
Oh, thank you.
Spider-Man all together.
I appreciate you saying that like that instead of making it sound like I'm all over the place and scattered.
No, listen. I just gave a talk about this yesterday on the importance of being multidisciplinary in this day and age.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
actually, I really believe in this that you have to have multiple disciplines. The question is how you manage to juggle everything. So what's on your plate these days?
What's on my plate these days? Same as it has been for the last over almost a dozen years. Still practicing law. I have, the doctorate from a New York City school with an international law certificate and all of those fun things. So still practicing law. I still love it, but I also love writing and books and literature. So I ended up agenting at some point. And now I also try to sort of coach authors. And I try to do that separately at one point. But now, as they come, we just, if we can help, we can, because I can't represent everyone, it's
So
so.
so I think it's wonderful when the agents also have I would say sideline where they train and coach authors. Do the authors know that this is not going to get them some kind of higher
Yes. Yeah.
ranking
See,
in
that's
your?
that's a very important thing. And it's funny because when you mentioned multidisciplinary, um, that's a tricky thing, right? Because as a New York lawyer, we have strict ethics rules and we can't practice law. Like we can't commingle funds. You need to have everything separate. If you're doing any other kind of business, you can't be like all these things. So it's been really tricky keeping those things separate. Now that I have systems, it's easy, separate bank accounts, separate everything, and disclosures to everyone. So when we offer services, we also tell them, hey, this is not, most likely you wouldn't even be considered to be represented by the agency. And people are like, no, I really want your expertise. I don't care about you representing me. And, nowadays a lot of authors are self-publishing. So that really helps because we do have the expertise to do that. You know,
Okay, great.
yeah.
So that's oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Did
Another
I
one
just open up a whole
wonderful.
other branch of questioning?
Yes,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of
another
really smart.
branch of questioning is like an understatement here, dear.
Okay, yeah, well, we can definitely go there and we could even finish it another time. I know that time's short, but a lot of people are really doing well self-publishing. Amazon is wonderful. It facilitates all these things. And there are a lot of people who are super qualified, even ex-editors that are actually offering freelance services that are being hired by self-published authors. So the quality of the work that's being self-published in a lot of genres, and there's a lot of good examples of people are doing a really good job. So it's not like in the older days, like when I first started agenting maybe 10 years ago, there was a little bit more of a stigma, and I remember we were the first agency to have an EPUB only author agent. This was the L. Perkins agency right before I started my agency. And people were like, what? EPUB only? Why is that? We're like, well, because most of the books in specific genres, especially this agent was actually representing romance, LGBTQ, women's fiction, and all of those things were starting to do well, on ebook, not in print. And it's still the case, like over 90% of the books are in those genres are published in ebook. I got it.
Okay, well, this is a very informal conversation. So Marisa, if you look behind me, you can see that my big love is for picture books.
Yes.
I haven't I shouldn't say I haven't. I've barely seen out of hundreds and thousands of picture books, a self-published picture book which doesn't fall in some way from a traditionally published book.
Yeah.
And you can have the best editor in the world, but the artwork really doesn't fit, or the packaging or the cover, or there's just so many things in a picture book that you have to get right. And I know because I self-published a lot of picture books until I had one come out.
It's a little harder, isn't it? Yeah, for sure.
Much harder in my estimation, but we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
We'll get
Well, I don't
back
want
to
to
that.
discourage anyone. I mean, if you want to do it right, you can. It just takes a lot more effort. And, especially with the artwork you mentioned, sometimes it doesn't match. That's super important. You have this traditional houses like Macmillan and HarperCollins and Simon & Schuster. They have, a whole slew of people to choose from, and they're really familiar with their art. And they're, so when they're reading manuscripts, picture book manuscripts, they're already envisioning like which one it's going to match to. And this is what I tell a lot of picture book authors, like, don't submit your work with illustrations, because you're doubling your chances of getting declined, because if the illustrations don't match their vision, then they're going to decline it. So
okay, so but the chances are less than 1 in 1,000 anyway. How many submissions do you get a month, Marisa? About
a month, I don't
a
know,
day, a week. We'll do the math.
I would say about 25 or so a day on a normal day.
Okay.
Like busier days after conferences, it kind of gets crazy. I would say on
let-
average 25.
Okay, let's say 25 a day, which is 750 a month, which is 8,000 a year.
Oh, you're
So you're
obviously
getting.
better at math than I am.
No, I'm just guessing.
Right.
We're at war here, so nobody's going to fault me for getting it wrong.
Okay.
So 8,000 submissions a year. How many new people do you take on a year?
I don't really have a number. It depends on the works that I find and how busy I am. Yeah.
But not more than 8 or 10.
No.
So I rest my case. The odds are like 1 in
I know.
1,000 of getting an agent.
It
And
is.
once
It's
once you've signed a very fortunate author as an agent, does that mean he's going to be traditionally published?
Well, nothing's guaranteed, right? The publishing industry is super subjective, and because all of the editors that are acquiring books have a certain number of books that they need to acquire a year to fill their lists. So they're really looking for specific things in a certain limited number of books. So it doesn't mean that it's going to make a connection with someone, that it's going to get picked up. That, a lot of times it has happened that the person that we queried or pitched the book to loved the book, and then they brought it to acquisitions and they were like, oh, I couldn't get it past acquisitions. And it's like, so it's a little frustrating. If you think you're frustrated as an author, you wait, you got to ask agents how many declines we get. It's
So it's important for me to ask what you're looking for these days in children's literature, or maybe you're not looking. Are you looking?
I am looking. Yeah, I'm looking for very sort of pull at the heartstrings, like special books that will really stand out timelessly. I'm not looking for something that's super, in the now book. Like, so it doesn't necessarily just have to be like pull at the heartstrings. If it's funny in a certain way, if it has like sort of a good message, but not didactic, I'm still a fan of rhyming books, even though they're not really wanting the rhyming books, So, I represent Tish Raby, who is the author of the Cat in the Hat books for the Dr. Seuss estate, and she writes everything in rhyme, and it's beautiful. And she, I hope nobody gets mad at me, but she does almost a better job than Dr. Seuss does, because she actually doesn't make up words. She sticks with it. But the rationale behind editors not wanting the rhyming books is that sometimes it restricts what they can write. So people try to fit in the right word and the message not quite right, right? Having said that, I think there's a lot of value in rhyming books because our curriculum still, like in younger years in school, we're still including like rhyming exercises, and they're really good for the kids. So I think at some point we'll probably go back, and all they have to do is just decline the books that are restricted, you know. I don't know, just go back to the rhymes.
I think that rhyming books are terrific.
They're fun to
If
read.
they,
You know, as a parent, I loved reading
but
them.
they're so impossible to write.
Yeah.
There's very few of us,
Mhm.
myself included, who can write in meter and rhyme.
Mhm.
And people think that a Heim, Beim, Schmeim, time. It's not just like that. You have to have the meter right. You have to be able to sing the story.
Exactly.
I tell my students that if you can't sing the rhyming story, then something is wrong. And
Mm.
it's so hard to do properly. And like you say, if bottle and then I need throttle, and then all of a sudden I'm in an airplane.
Yeah. Good
Okay,
point.
we need to. I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh.
A couple of years ago, you had some thing.
Mhm.
What was that all about?
What was
I'm
the
gonna.
thing about?
What was the thing about? And I'm like giving you the stage. Tell everybody.
Oh goodness, I
Uh,
haven't talked about this in a while. So okay, so it was 2020. I think it was around June. And we had been all locked up with COVID and not very happy. Kids are screaming, dogs are whining, husbands are doing their thing. No offense to all the men.
no
So
offense taken.
I mean, tensions were high. And then, the George Floyd thing happened. And it was horrible. And I remember watching that on TV with my husband, and I literally just got nauseous and just bad times. And I'm sure that's how everybody was feeling, hence the reactions, right? So, a couple of days went by. My husband actually told me, do not post on Twitter. I'm like, oh, what would I possibly say that could get me in trouble on Twitter? You know me. Well, I did. I posted something on Twitter, and it was something that I actually felt like I wanted to post, and I maybe didn't think about it too much. In hindsight, it was stupid to even say anything. But I said it because I think it was like the day before I was reading this. I think it was like an essay or a post or something by Barack Obama. I don't remember where it was because I followed him everywhere, but I was reading something he wrote, and it was about riots. And it was about how when riots happen in a specific town and things get destroyed or burnt down, the businesses take like 10 to 15 years to rebuild and stuff. And I was like, well, that's terrible, and it's happening now. So when I was on Twitter, I saw this post or article about a protest that had taken place on a bridge, and people had actually sat down silent and they wouldn't move. They blocked all the traffic, and they were like, had their signs, and they got their point across, right? And I was like, well, good for you. Kudos to you guys. That's how you do it. You just get your point across, no violence, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I still don't, I'm sorry, but I still don't believe violence is okay. I don't think that because you want to be heard that you should come and hit me over the head or burn my house down, right? Not okay. So I'm sorry if I get burnt about this again. You can edit it out or whatever you want to
No,
do.
I'm not editing a thing. As a Jewish person, I abhor violence. Violence you only resort to
When you have to defend yourself
when you have to defend yourself.
or your
So
kid.
I'm
Yeah.
so far I'm with you, and even if I'm not with you,
Right.
I'm still with you, Marisa. I want to hear your
Thank
story.
you. No, I mean, well, what I did wrong was I didn't realize that I was telling people how to protest. So that was my faux pas, right? And people were getting upset online, and I was like, I don't understand. So somebody said, well, you're telling people how to protest. How dare you? And I was like, oh shit, I'm sorry. Like didn't realize how it would be taken. I was just saying that violence isn't okay. I'm just going to take it down. So I took it down, but Twitter just kept going. And the worst part of it was that I was not getting support from my staff in the agency, and my people.
In one second, in your own
In my agency,
In
the
your own
agents,
eponymous agency.
yeah, people who actually
Marisa
know me for
Corvisiero
years.
was not
Yeah,
getting support in her own agency.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the support, it wasn't like, you know, you're a bad person or whatever. They were like, oh my God, Maris, what did she do? How could you do something so stupid? Now we're not, you know, people with minorities, what are they going to think? You're a racist. They're not going to want to submit to the agency. And I was like, but you know, I'm not. What I said is not racist. It's just a stupid thing that I didn't realize how it was going to be taken. It's like, I took it down. I already apologized. What's the problem? It was not going away. So I said to them, you know what? It's okay. You can go and I'll stand by myself. I don't want anybody to get caught in the crossfires. I did this on an email because we were all in a group thing. And I was like, you're free to go if you want to go, and I can take this on my own. I don't want anybody else to be hurt by my stupidity, right? So they all left. And then they published the message that I sent telling everybody that I fired the whole agency. So
Did you fire the agency or not?
that's what I told them. I said, you can go if you're not comfortable.
Ah,
You know, I'll
but
stand on my own. I don't want you to get caught in the
so
crossfires.
well, and they took their authors with them,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want their authors. Yeah. Yeah. So
and
that's
what, and
kind
you
of how it
start you,
happened. And you know, the majority of the people, I mean, before this even happened, my two agents had already said, you know, I think I need to leave. And the rest of the people who actually left were apprentices and interns that were already finishing their terms. So I didn't fire anyone. None of them were paid people. None of them were actually making me any money. So they hadn't sold anything. They had no experience. But because they went on Twitter crying for me, they all got jobs in better agencies. And I shouldn't say that. We probably should re-edit that.
no, we're not gonna re-edit, but today is the situation better? Like, do
yeah.
people realize that you made a mistake and that you apologized and that you feel sorry about what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure how much people realize because there wasn't much. I just, after everyone left and this whole thing sort of exploded, I was approached by Publishers Marketplace, and they said, or Publishers Weekly or whatever the news section of it is. And they were like, well, what happened? We want to know why you fired everyone. I was like, okay, so this is what happened. I wrote a whole thing. And they wrote back, they're like, well, we're not going to run an article. There's no story here. So I was like, well, thanks. And I didn't really want to go out on my own and, you know, air out all the laundry and who said what and whatever. So I just sort of let it blow over. The nice thing is that a lot of agents from other agencies and publishers actually reached out in private. And even my own clients were like, do you want me to go and say something? You want me to stick up for you? This is terrible. People are saying crazy things about you. And I was like, you know what? Don't get involved because it's just going to escalate. The more people that are involved, I don't want to hurt your reputation or whatever.
After this happened, um, you what did you do? You closed this agency and opened another one? You started from scratch? What happened?
No, nothing. I just kept working with my clients and swore that I would never hire anybody again. And I did it, but I did it on my own for a couple of months, and you know, I still kept getting resumes from people, and I had met someone at one of my mindset workshops, and she reached out and she said, hey, I want to come work with you. She's like, I've heard everything that happened. I don't care about that. And she was like, I know that you're not a bad person, and I would love to work with you and help you and work with your authors. And I was like, okay, you know, well, why not? And I also had taken on 2 interns because I was working with Monmouth University here in the New Jersey office. And I had already promised them that I would take interns for one of their programs. So I took them on, kept them off Twitter and on like the website and stuff because I don't want them to get in trouble for working for me. But they were really great and they got college credit and everything. So that really worked out. But after they left, I was like, oh my God, now I don't have anybody to help me with the query box. How am I going to keep up with all of this? And the queries kept coming in, you know, so it didn't really affect the business except for the reputation part. And once in a while, somebody comes up and asks, you know, like you just did, And it kind of, sometimes it takes me by surprise, and sometimes I'm like, okay, here we go, I'll talk
Well,
about it.
I want to kind of clean the slate because
Thank you.
amidst this criticism, I also heard lovely things about you. I was very
It
eager
doesn't
to
make sense.
to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So it was important to talk about it, and now let's put it behind us. The Prime Minister of Israel just deeply regretted a stupid tweet that he made, and we're in the middle of a war. So,
I don't have anything about it.
Advice to everybody is think a million times before you tweet controversial stuff, I guess.
I know Twitter is a difficult place, and I'll be honest with you. I think that's the biggest part of how I do business that actually changed. I don't really do social media as much anymore. So it was,
So, yeah, let's go back a little bit to your life and how you, because one of the things I really wanted to ask you, where you said, like, after this blew up, you could have just said, okay, I'll close the agency or whatever. I have so many other things to do. I'm a coach and I'm a consultant and speaker and lawyer
I think
and
I thought about
attorney.
it for like 2 seconds, and I was like, well, I wouldn't do that to my clients, because my clients were still with me, except I think one of them who I had just signed was a children's author. She left. She didn't tell me why, but I'm sure it was because of that. But everybody else kind of stayed on, and I wasn't going to desert them.
I'm happy to hear that. So where did you fall in love with literature?
Oh, you're going to judge me when I tell you. Anne Rice.
My job is not to judge. My job is to ask
You're just the interviewer.
questions.
I fell in love with literature with Anne Rice, believe it or not. And yes, I had read all the school books and, actual literary things. But I have to say that when I picked up an Anne Rice book, Interview with a Vampire, it was kind of a funny story, because I had a friend who was super obsessed with the vampire books. And one day she was really upset. And she was like, I let Nancy borrow my, oh shoot, maybe we should edit that one too. I let so-and-so borrow my book. She never gave it back. And now I don't have the first book in the collection, blah, blah, blah. And so her birthday was coming up. So I went out and bought her the book. So that night I was going to see her the next morning. So I went to wrap the book to give it to her as a gift. And I was like, let me see what all the fuss is about. What the hell is she, was she crazy about this stupid? I mean, I always loved vampires. I used to stay up until I used to sneak up and watch the Nosferatus on TV, and the black and white things when my parents didn't know I was watching in the middle of the night by myself. Very weird. Anyway, so I started reading Interview with a Vampire, and all of a sudden I was on my floor cross-legged, and next thing I know, I'm on my bed just halfway through the book. And I just kept going until morning and just read it. And the morning I gave it to her, I told her, I was like, well, I'm giving you the book. And she's like, you want to borrow it to read? I was like, I read it last night. It's awesome. I'm going to go get Lestat. So that's how it started. And then after that, I read all of those books, and I started reading more books. And that's when I actually started actively reading.
How old were you? How old were you?
Like 18, maybe. I mean, a little older, but I mean, I read all my school stuff. So it wasn't like I had never read a book before. And I had read other science fiction books, like Piers Anthony, and Robert Jordan, the Wheel of Time books, way back when. So I liked them, but I never got hooked. I'm just gonna keep reading. And that's when it just, every week, every so often, I would go pick up another book. Finish one, go pick up another one. Now I just keep ordering them and read them when I can. But things are a little different now.
What kind of family did you grow up in?
In what way?
In every way, as a little kid. No, but I'll tell you why. Because you're an achiever.
In relation to literature, you mean? Or okay.
No, in relation to Marisa, this program is also about you. You're a real achiever. You got to do this and then this and then this, and get this degree and that degree and the other degree. Where does this stem from?
I don't know. Maybe it's ADD. I don't know. It's I believe in the mental mental growth, personal growth, growth mindset, it's setting goals, achieving them, coming up with the next one. I feel like getting stagnant is not very satisfying, doing the same thing repetitively.
Did your family encourage you to be an overachiever?
Yes and no. Like I said, my parents were crazy and maybe a little bit of Argentine hippies. So I grew up in Argentina. My parents are both Italian immigrants to Argentina. They had yeah, and then
I
came.
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
hablas
I'm an immigrant.
hablas español también?
Hablo español, hablo italiano y inglés es mi
Wow.
tercero. Mhm.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad had a long, I don't know how to describe it without sounding weird. Well, he tried a lot of things and didn't get to finish for different reasons. So my father is a tailor by trade. So he fixes suit. He's really good. But he at one point decided to go to med school, and he had a little bit time left to graduate. And this is when Argentina was going through a lot of political, economic turmoils. People were getting kidnapped and disappearing and all of those things. So he had to drop out. He felt like he had to drop out, and he already had my older sister. And he was like, I think I'm gonna work and I'm gonna go back to school later on. So a couple of years later, he decided to go to law school. He did 2 years, and I'm not sure if law school in Argentina is 3 years like it is here, but he didn't finish that either. So he went back to his old reliable, kept being a tailor, made good money, put us through school, immigrated here, and people valued his work. So it worked out for him, not just because he was talented, but he was also very hardworking.
So how old were you when you came to America?
11.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 11. So, and so maybe that was part of my drive to go to law school. He always told me, it's like, you don't have to go to law school just because I didn't finish. You don't have to finish what I started. But I think it came, it was funny because my cousins, when we used to play, we used to get in trouble. And for some reason, this one, Marcelo, used to always get in trouble. And I would stick up for him. And my godfather, his dad, was like, what are you, the public defender? And I'm like, what's a public defender? And so then that's when I was like, maybe I'll become a lawyer, stick up for people and, whatever. So I think that's where it was rooted initially. Then, I don't know, I think in high school, I decided that I really liked business. So I was like, well, maybe I'll be the CEO of Coca-Cola, but I'm going to get a law degree anyway. So then I went to Hofstra University in Long Island, and I studied business with international business and marketing with a minor in finance and languages, because I placed out of Italian and Spanish. So I decided, I just wanted to do the business background, and then I applied to law school. I went to law school and all of those things, and I ended up doing mergers and acquisitions after law school. Well, actually, first I did trust and estates for a year or so until I ended up at the big law firm, and I did mergers and acquisitions.
Okay, my daughter does M&A here in Israel.
Oh, nice.
So
Fantastic.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, it's super fun. Lots of hours.
But okay, so you were a lawyer, you had several law degrees, a doctorate, juris, or wherever it's called.
Juris Doctorate, yeah.
Yeah, and you showed everybody.
Yeah.
And so
my dad's proud. My dad's proud. He still has no idea what I do about the books. He's like, oh, my daughter's a lawyer, but she also likes books. He has no idea what I do. It's so funny.
You're a daddy's girl, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So he should be He should be very proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And so, the piece in the jigsaw puzzle that I'm missing, Marisa, is okay. M&A, and you have all this stuff going on as a lawyer, and then one Wednesday afternoon, you say, "Oh, time to do something else."
Wednesday afternoon or evening, I was sitting by myself in a conference room thinking about a crazy dream that I had, and I started writing a book. I don't even know. I think I just said, maybe I should write this down because I want to remember this dream. And it turned out into a book. But the dream was, I've only recently really shared what the dream was about. It was in space. And I was surrounded by people who were trying to protect me. And there was different race of aliens. It was this crazy, amazing thing. And the feelings that I got from it were like, oh my God, I got to write this down. But when I started writing it down, I couldn't translate the feelings that I had in the dream. And I ended up changing the storyline. I ended up writing a time travel, heavy science fiction book. And then I changed it to a romance book because my characters were so cool that I had to hook them up. So that book, needless to say, changed so many times. I've probably rewritten in my head 5 times, has not been published. So maybe one day I'll just go back and write it the right way. So that's how it all started.
So, well, no, but I mean, something's missing here because to be a literary agent, you have to know editors, you have to understand the publishing business. There's some gap here that you're
Yeah.
not
So
filling. I mean,
after, yeah,
I've been writing for 40 years. I'm not going to become an agent because I don't know the business.
yeah, it kind of happened for me. I think I was meant to help other authors. I think it was my path. So what happened was after I finished writing my first draft of this book, which was probably terrible, I kind of said to myself, what do I do now? Like, how do I publish this? Who do I go to? So I started doing research, and people were like, oh, you should go to writers' conferences. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. People who write books, hello. So I started going to conferences, and I made some friends, and I made some contacts, and we started doing like becoming critique partners. And I met some publishers, some editors at different houses that were taking pitches or whatever. So one day, at this point, I had already quit my law firm, and I had twin boys. So I started my own law practice. So I was sort of at home and starting to grow my law practice, and I was writing. So I was trying to like juggle everything. And this friend, one of my critique partners, was like, listen, I'm having a hell of a time finding an agent. How do I do this? He's like, can I possibly just let you, he's like, you met that person at what a conference, at that publishing house. Maybe we could send them the book and tell them that you represent me. And I was like, well, if I'm your lawyer, I represent you. I was like, give me $1. So like, so we got him a publishing deal as his attorney, not as his agent. And I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. Like, who else can I help? And he was like, well, I'm going to send you my friend so-and-so. So friend so-and-so came along, and I hooked her up with someone. I didn't actually broker that deal, but I found the right editor for her to contact. And then they actually looked at the work because I had sent them, and then they're like, well, you need an agent. So she went and found an agent, somebody else that was actually an agent. Anyway, so this is how it started. And then one day I met Lori Perkins, who is this amazing woman in New York City, who had been agenting for about 22 years at the time. I never remember exactly how long she was agenting up to that point when we met. I think it was around 22 years. And she said, listen, if you want to be an agent, you come work at my agency. 6 months, I'll teach you everything you need to know about contracts, publishing, editing, like all that stuff. And then you can do it right. And I was like, well, okay, I think if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to half-ass it, right? So I went with Lori, and I ended up staying at her agency for 2 years. So learned a lot, met a lot of people. And after a while, I said, I think I'm ready. I think I'm going to start my own agency. She's like, well, I'm surprised you stayed here that long. Like, she knew it was happening, but she was just letting me do my thing, so it was really kind. So that's how I started my agency. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
So now that we have a good feeling for Marisa,
I filled in the gaps.
Incredibly. So what are you looking for? This is your stage to tell us what you're looking for.
I am looking for many different things, actually, but let's just talk about books. Even in books, I'm looking for a lot of things. I do have a lot of interest, and I have a really wide scope of categories that I look at in genres. So primarily these days, I'm really enjoying the science fiction and fantasy, especially for young adults. Kind of, there are things that I still love that are kind of, the market's a little bit saturated, like, young adult fantasy with fays. It's really hard to place those these days because there's so many good ones. I'm totally losing my voice. Sorry.
You're doing great.
Thank you. No, it's going. I actually had a cold during the weekend, and
we can make a deal. You be my agent, and I'll be your voice coach.
There you go. Oh, can you teach me how to sing too?
Of course.
Of course. So I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
We were talking about, I've lost my train of thought because I'm thinking about what song I should sing for you. when 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 the
Don't
show
get me started singing because nobody will follow
when
you
the show
anymore.
is over. You were talking about young adults
Oh, we're
and
talking about what I want. Sorry. Yes. My goodness. See, I haven't finished my coffee yet. So young adults love young adult, contemporary young adult, fantasy, adventure, anything issue driven to help kids learn different voices, all of those things, please send them in. For adult, I'm looking for psychological thrillers, historical, romance, even period romances. They don't necessarily have to be like Victorian. If it's like in the 40s or 20s, we're really into those, and retellings are still popular. Yeah, so romance is a little bit trickier these days. Like we were talking about self-publishing, a lot of people are self-publishing really well. So publishers are a little bit more skeptical about signing those books on because it's hard to compete with the pricing and what the self-published authors are doing. The advances aren't that great, and sometimes it's not worth it for the authors. In all honesty, they can make more money self-published. And I keep saying all these things that I'm going to get in so much trouble with everything I'm saying here, but it's just how it is. I tell people, and most of the romance or women's fiction authors that I represent are hybrid. And I think that they do better than most people because they're hybrid. It's like they take the best of both worlds and kind of merge them together, and publish successfully. So that's something to consider if anybody's
okay. What about look behind me, Marisa. What
picture.
about pick?
Yeah, yeah. So we said YA, so middle grade chapter books and picture books also. I kind of said a little bit about what I like about picture books. I do like the rhymes, even though they're harder to sell. Wouldn't turn it down just because it's rhyming. Good messages, quirky things, funny things, lighthearted things, things to lift up the kids, spiritual mindset things I love for kids. Somebody recently sent in a yoga book, which we're taking a look at. So that's exciting. Anything to make kids better and happier is what we're looking for. But also, I mentioned pulling at the heartstrings before, like a book that's going to make mom get emotional, like they'll remember timelessly. My kids still remember the I Love You Forever book. And they're like, Mom, remember cry every time you read that book. It was so ridiculous. I'm
What
like,
Robert Munch?
yeah, yes.
It's a great book.
It's beautiful. It's a little sad.
I'll love you forever.
Oh, he's
I'll like you for always. As long as I need my baby, you'll be. Here, you see, I found what to sing you.
very nice. Very nice. Okay, I was going to try to step in, but I was like, I'm listening to my voice. I probably shouldn't.
Well, as a Canadian, I'm a big fan of Robert Munch. I would be a big fan of Robert Munch anyway.
Yeah, for sure. It's, it takes a special person to write
So something Munchian and something that's
yeah.
with rhyme that's done really well, heartstring.
Yeah.
And I saw on your website you also mentioned STEAM books.
STEM. Yeah. Or STEAM. Yeah, because the art part is important too. Like I said, anything to teach kids things without being super didactic. So if they're fun, and it's also very important in probably all of the things that I mentioned that the books have really good characters. We want character driven so the kids can really connect with the character and follow the journey. It's also really good for merchandising. So publishers like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other advice for people who want to be the one in 1,000?
Don't give up. Keep writing, keep honing your craft, meet people, make connections, and just keep at it, keep trying. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Don't let anybody tell you that it's too hard, because I always say, if you keep moving forward, even if you have to take a break or take a few steps back, if you keep going, eventually you get there. So just keep trying, don't give up. And if it's your dream, you'll make it happen. Just stay positive.
Wow, wonderful. Anything I haven't asked you?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, there's probably a lot more, but yeah, I think publishing has, publishing is constantly changing. Like it's one of those very fluid industries that you really need to keep your finger on the pulse of. It's important for authors to know that, what's hot now isn't necessarily what they should be writing. They should be thinking about the next thing, or just write the book that's in your heart, because that's what's going to show. It always comes through in the page. So, there are cycles. If you write something that's timely now and you miss the boat, shelve it, write something else, and, try again later. And because it will come back around. It's like bell bottoms. It's like,
No, but you're also looking for books that have an eternal message, that are not, swayed by.
yeah, I love those, and they're not easy to find. We do get a lot of book submissions, and we look at them like, this is really cute, but that just can't put your finger on it. And they are hard to sell, because everybody thinks, picture books are short. We all think we can write them, but they're not easy to write. They're not.
They're a bitch. Say it. I said it.
Yeah, they're not easy. I mean, I admire people who write a good picture book. It's like, wow, you have a beautiful mind. It's just, and those are, when I get that feeling from a book that I'm reading in my slush pile, or, even at a conference. I was just at a conference in Maryland, and this woman just came in, she sat and she's like, I just wrote these for my grandkids, and I want to know if they're any good. She's like, I'm not actually pitching them. So she pulls out this binder, and she's got this pages put in like this plastic inserts with like this beautiful illustrations that she did herself, and she starts flipping the pages, and I'm sitting there with my apprentice Cat Ross, and we looked at each other, and they were so good, and we were like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And it was like, and then we started reading them, and I'm going, these are good, like I'm trying to like dry my tear, because it was just that good. So we're most likely going to sign her, so she's sending stuff
Wonderful
in. So yeah, it just, when we read them, we know, it's hard to, I wish I could give people like the secret formula to writing a picture book, but I think the secret is just writing something from the heart.
Wonderful advice.
Thank
So
you.
Marisa Corvisiero,
Yes.
it's been wonderful having you on the show.
Thank
I'm
you
going to
so much.
ask you to leave and come back, so we can have like a few minutes without all the public watching.
Sorry guys, it's going to be a private session.
So but you are open for queries, and you are
Yes.
open to help authors, taking
We
into
love helping authors, and
taking into consideration that this will not give you
right.
a
So
leg up
it's
on.
separate. Right. So if they go to our website, corvisieroagency.com, they'll see we have a tab for representation, and all of my staff is there. I think we're 14 or so people now. And I think God has blessed me, because I've found the best people that I've ever worked with. We're a very close-knit team, and we use this app called Slack, and I'm not endorsing Slack. I don't get royalties for this, but we love it. Like, we're on there every day, and like I even have like office hours so that they could just come in, and but we talk all day long. We help each other, and we even have this thing that we do. And actually, Tessa Schaefer, my right-hand person, came up with this. One day she's like, you know what, on Fridays, we're just going to say thank you to whoever on the team helped us this week. So every Friday around 4:00, thank you to so-and-so for blah, blah, blah. You're amazing. Like, it's like a love fest. And it's just such a good feeling, like, to have people who have not just the talent and the skills and everything to help authors and are like-minded, like I am, and like Tessa, like we're here to help people, but they're just so fun. They're fun to work with, and they're loving, open people, and they're constantly helping each other and collaborating. So anyone on that list is someone that they can submit to, unless they're just interns who are not taking queries. But we do have their wish list on there. So if somebody sees something that the intern likes, they could actually mention that and send it in. Because if they're interested in signing it, we might actually sign it on with the intern and help them, teach them, work through the process, because we're very much a teaching agency. So yeah, we all have submission guidelines. We use the query box. There's a button on there. It's all on the website. And on the website, there's also another tab for Author Preneur Services, which is where, completely separate. And we have the disclosure there saying this does not mean you will get representation, or it's not a back way in. For paid services, you can get, your manuscript edited. You can have a consultation. We'll help you with your query, whatever you need help with. We're here to help.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Marisa, it's been wonderful.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
So, in closing,
Yes.
I want to thank Marisa Corvisiero for this wonderful and very frank and illuminating discussion. I'm Mel Rosenberg, talking to you from war-torn Israel, and we haven't had any sirens, so that's not a bad thing. And the Kidlit is keeping me going these days. So thank you for joining me. And I am the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network, and very lucky to be. And Marisa, thanks. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody. Say goodbye, Marisa.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
And we're going to leave and come back to the same link.
You got it. Thank you.
And
Thank
you guys are not going to know what we're talking about.
God bless.
It's been great.
Thank you for doing what you do.
You too, dear.
Bye-bye.